good evening and welcome to ViuTV News in Hong Kong. I'm Joel Flynn. Coming up on tonight's show. Officials caved to pressure and dropped charges against a grandma who sold a piece of cardboard without a hawker's licence. Another terror attack hits London with at least one dead and almost a dozen injured after a van mounts a pavement. And negotiations over Britain leaving the EU finally begin with smiles on all sides on day one. We start with local news, though, and the government has dropped charges against an elderly woman accused of selling cardboard without a hawker's licence. Earlier today, the Civic Party submitted a petition to the government with 14,000 signatures from the public demanding the officials drop the charges. The 75-year-old grandma sold a piece of cardboard she'd collected to a domestic helper for $1 in Central last Sunday. She was then accused by a number of Food and Environmental Hygiene Department officers of breaking the law as she did not hold a hawker's licence. The incident spurred public outcry, with some Hong Kongers calling officials cold-hearted. But Food and Health Secretary has expressed sympathy with law enforcement.
Our frontline food and environmental hygiene officers are responsible for law enforcement. That's bearing a lot of pressure. The Bureau will discuss with the FEHD about how officers can stay fair and empathetic when carrying out their duties.
Ahead of the 20th anniversary of the city's handover back to China, the director of Beijing's liaison office in Hong Kong has hit out at critics and opponents of the government. In an interview with Chinese state media, Zhang Zhaoming said the SAR could have been better off. Without naming anyone specifically, Zhang said looking back over the last 2 decades, it was regretful some people politicised everything in the city. He said that made it difficult for the government to solve economic and livelihood problems. But Zhang praised the way the administration applied the basic law. He cited Beijing's appointment of SAR government officials and its role in major issues, including political reform, as examples. Another principal official to leave the administration after its term ends next week. Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development Greg So confirmed he won't stay for another run after 9 years in the Bureau. In an interview with Now TV, the minister wouldn't say whether CE-elect Carrie Lam had invited him to join her oncoming team, only that he'd been thinking about leaving since late last year. So also refuted claims that Chief Executive CY Leung tried to fire him over the HKTV free-to-air television licence controversy. He said he might go back to practising law, but will first spend some time with his family. An 11-year-old boy has been given a second chance at life after receiving a heart transplant he'd been waiting for a whole year. At a press conference, Tang Kai Him and his mother thanked the donor and the donor's family for saving his life. The boy suffered from heart failure 3 years ago and had been relying on external heart pumps. He finally received a donation last Monday and underwent an 8-hour-long operation at Queen Mary Hospital. A cardiologist said the many operations Tang received over the years made the surgery particularly difficult.
Because he has multiple replacement of the device and has been a long time, there was a lot of scar during the operation that may require extra time to free the heart and then replace the donor heart into the body.
Britain has been attacked for words that the world has heard repeatedly in the last few months. Today it's happened again after a van mounted a pavement near a mosque in North London, killing 1 person and injuring at least 10 others. According to the British Muslim Council, a van ploughed through worshippers as they were leaving a mosque after prayers in the early hours of Monday. Police said they've arrested 1 person. However, no motive has officially yet been declared, but the incident has been described as a terror attack. Prime Minister Theresa May has described the attack as an attempt to divide the country.
This was an attack on Muslims near their place of worship. And like all terrorism, in whatever form, it shares the same fundamental goal. It seeks to drive us apart and to break the precious bonds of solidarity and citizenship that we share in this country. We will not let this happen.
Well, our correspondent Amber Austin Wright is at the scene of the attack. She sent us this update.
Well, as you can see behind me here, there is a strong police presence here at the scene of the attack, a strong media turnout as people try to understand and make sense of what happened here at Finsbury Park last night. A cordon is still in place and extra police officers have been deployed across the city and here to help protect and make Muslims feel safe during Ramadan. Now, this does appear to have been an anti-Muslim attack, possibly in retaliation from other attacks we've seen in recent times in Manchester and in London and even Greater Europe. Now, members of the public held down the driver of this van last night before police could arrest him. That allowed police to arrest him. It's unclear whether he acted alone or whether he was part of a wider network. But at this stage, police believe there are no other suspects, but that is something they will be looking into closely, whether he had any other associates.
Well, meanwhile, Britain has today begun formal negotiations with the European Union over Brexit. The UK's Brexit Minister David Davis and his EU counterpart Michel Barnier were all smiles as they posed for the cameras. Davis emphasised that there was still more that united the two sides than divided them.
So while will undoubtedly be challenging times ahead of us in the negotiations, we will do all that we can to ensure that we deliver a deal that works in the best interests of all citizens. To that end, we're starting this negotiation in a positive and constructive tone, determined to build a strong and special partnership between ourselves and our European allies and friends for the future.
Well, for more on what's happening, let's cross to Angeline Ong in London for us. And Mr. Davis and Monsieur Barnier seemingly quite cosy in front of the media there. But up until now, things have been pretty frosty. Do we expect that to continue over the next 2 years?
Well, certainly there'll be many thorny issues that will have to be ironed out by both sides. There's the contentious divorce bill, for example. Brussels previously warned that they'll only discuss potential future trade deals with Britain once significant progress was made on divorce matters. And this includes a potential exit payment of up to 100 billion euros, according to FT estimates. David Davis, the Brexit minister, has poo-pooed this, Joel, saying Britain would not be coughing up that amount. And then there's the EU citizens' rights. Brussels wants as a priority to guarantee rights for 3 million EU citizens living in Britain. Now, the EU wants a deal on that as well, as there are around 1 million British expatriates in the EU. Then there's the question of how to create a seamless border on Ireland, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. We haven't even got to the issue of the customs union yet. So those smiles may well not last very long. Back to you.
OK, Angeline Ong for us there in London. To the Middle East now, where the US military has claimed self-defense after it shot down a Syrian fighter jet in the country's northern city of Raqqa. The Syrian army said its pilot is missing in the first such move by the United States since the start of the conflict there in 2011. Grace Lee has this report.
A U.S. Hornet warplane shooting a Syrian fighter jet out of the sky on Sunday. Washington says it was acting in self-defense and that the Syrian plane had dropped bombs near U.S.-backed forces, while Damascus says it was downed while flying a mission against Islamic State militants. It's the first time a Syrian jet has been hit by the U.S. since the start of the conflict in 2011. The Syrian army is calling it an attempt to undermine its efforts as the only effective force in fighting terrorism across the country. The U.S.-led coalition has been aggressively ramping up its aerial bombing campaign in Syria, recently capturing several districts near Raqqa from militants. Officials tell Reuters skirmishes have been breaking out between the Syrian army and U.S.-backed forces around Raqqa as both sides tried to recapture turf from Islamic State. Warplanes from the U.S.-led coalition have also struck pro-government forces several times in recent weeks. Washington also describes those strikes as self-defense.
OK, coming up next, the latest from the world of business. OK, we start with a look at today's market action. A fairly solid beginning to the week for shares here in Hong Kong. The Hang Seng Index advancing 1.2% to close at 25,924 points as investors clawed back some of last week's steep losses. Retailers and insurers led the charge. Sentiment got a boost thanks to signs liquidity conditions are improving. Meanwhile, average new home prices in China's 70 major cities rose 0.7% in May from the previous month. That's according to an official Reuters survey out today. Compared with a year ago, new builds were up 10.4% in May, just a touch down from April's 10.7% rise. Data suggested property investment in the country remains robust, despite government efforts to curb surging prices. Signs Japan's economic recovery is on track. Exports surged the most in 2 years in May, thanks to higher shipments of cars and steel. The 14.9% increase was the biggest since January 2015, although it did still come in below analyst expectations of a 16.1% bump. Imports, meanwhile, rose 17.8%, partly due to demand for intermediate goods companies needed to manufacture their products. Elsewhere, households in the UK are feeling the pinch as rising inflation puts a squeeze on spending power. A survey by IHS Markit showing how households feel about their personal finances fell to 45.8 in June, down from 47.1 in May, the 50-point level indicating no change. It is the most pessimistic reading in 3 months and one of the lowest readings since the end of 2013. Inflation hit 2.9% in May, its highest level in nearly 4 years. Well, to India next, where the rise of Hindu nationalism has prompted the shutdown of slaughterhouses across the country. As Grace Lee now reports, it's also meant job losses, though, for some of the country's poorest people.
Tucked away in the back streets of Agra in northern India, a multi-billion-dollar industry that employs many of the city's poorest people. Leather has been made here for centuries, but recently the industry has been taking a hit as Hindu hardliners crack down on the slaughter of cows, which they consider sacred. From global brands like Gucci